Good day each and everyone. My name is Razal R. Fernandez and my co-reporter is Miss Lea Ruth P. Bernardo. So we are going to tackle the topic 11, which is the sexual behavior.
Good day everyone, my name is Lea Ruth P. Bernardo, the first reporter of Group 11. So we have here the lesson objectives. When you finish reading this chapter, you should able to 1. Discuss the variety of sexual behaviors in humans. 2. Tackle a typically sexual variation. And 3. Show appreciation of the diversity of human sexual expression. Also, we have definition of terms, sexual behavior, and action with sexual intention and context. Erotic, related to sexual stimulation, has something to do with the erogenous zone. And also, the sexual response cycle, sequence of events from arousal to orgasm to resolution of sexual tension. Sexual dysfunction, a concern or problem in any of the phases of the sexual response cycle. Inability to have an erection or orgasm, painful intercourse. Copulatory behavior related to the insertion of penis to the vagina. Paraphilia, arousal from non-living objects and or non-consenting person. So we have here the introduction. In earlier discussion, we mentioned that psychology has 3 primary components: the affect, emotions and feelings, cognition, the thoughts, process, also the behavior, which is the action. When used as a framework in understanding human sexuality, it is only appropriate to explore the diversity of behaviors relevant to our understanding of human sexuality. So what is behavior? In simpler terms, it refers to an action. These are the things that we do, both overt or observable and covert, or not readily observable by the naked eye. On a daily basis, we act because of the motivation something drives us to do something. Some psychologists believe that we have behaved as a response to stimuli. Others believe that we do things because we want to achieve pleasure or avoid pain. Some think it is because we want to achieve the goal towards the fulfillment of our own potential and aspiration as a human in search for meaning. So what is interesting about this behavior? It is readily measurable as opposed to the feelings and thoughts. You can look at its frequency, how many times an action is done in a span of time. You can also check on the duration, how long does an action takes place in seconds, minutes, or hours. A behavior has an intensity, the magnitude by which it is done forcefully. It is weak, then there is diversity. What are the varieties of a similar behavior done in various contexts, or what are the different behavior we are capable of depending on our physical characteristic? So, we have here the sexual behaviors. So, sexual behaviors are the actions that humans agree to interpret as an expression of their sexual motivation or intentions. It is important to remember that behaviors are given meaning by people. For example, while hugging and kissing, maybe it's considered sexual in nature. This is not always the case because the context of the behavior matters. Ito na yung ginagawa ng mga couples to show their love from one another. Sexual behavior, ito rin yung reason ng pregnancy. So, sexual behavior are generally erotic behaviors such as they involve any of the primary or secondary erotic zone. Earlier, we mentioned that body parts such as face, neck, genitalia, and chest, among others, are erogenous zones. Sexual behaviors can be typed according to the aim of the behavior. For instance, sexual behaviors such as masturbation or the stimulation of one's own genitals can be considered as autoerotic or self-directed. Erotic motivation can also be directed to other people of the same sex or of the opposite sex. Homoerotic behaviors are the sexual behaviors oriented to the same sex. On the other hand, heterotic behaviors are used to refer to sexual behaviors oriented to other sex. For reproductive purposes, copulation or the insertion of the penis to the vagina is necessary. Humans can assume two positions in this process. More common is the ventral position or the ventris abdomen, wherein the male and the female species are facing each other. Alternatively, a ventral dorsal position or the dorsum back may be assumed wherein the abdomen of the male species is facing the dorsum of the female species, such that insertion of the penis to the vagina is from behind. However, sexual behaviors do not only refer to copulation, the insertion of the penis to the vaginal orifice. They also include the array of non-copulatory sexual behaviors such as hugging, kissing, and caressing. There are also sexual behaviors that involve oral stimulation of the genitals such as fellation, oral stimulation of the penis, or cunnilingus, oral stimulation of the vagina. Then, there are also sexual behaviors involving stimulation or penetration of the anal orifice or the anal sex. Next, we have here the sexual response cycle. For heterosexual couples, one of the ultimate goals of the sexual act is reproduction. This is made possible through the fertilization of the ovum by a sperm, which necessitates ejaculation release of the sperm from the human male into the internal reproductive system of the human female. Before this ultimate process, both of the human male and female undergoes a sequence of bodily changes which prepare them for the sexual climax. This sequence of changes is referred to as the sexual response cycles. Heterosexual couples, ito yung pagtatalik ng two different gender or nagmamahalan sa ibang kasarian. Ito yung reason or rason na pag nag-produce, nagiging possible ito dahil sa fertilized ovum ng isang babae at sperm na pinoproduce ng lalaki. According to Master and Johnson model, 1966 and 1970 proposed that the following are four phases in the cycle, which is the excitement. The excitement phase is the first phase in the cycle. For the human male, goal of this phase is erection or tumsil. The elongation is stiffening of the penis so that it can be efficiently inserted into the vagina. At this phase, the testes and scrotum start to elevate and some parts of the skin, like the breast and the chest, breadens a phenomenon referred to as sex flush. For the human female, the goal of this phase is lubrication is made possible by vaginal vasocongestion. At this phase, there is swelling of the glands, clitoris, and the labia minora, and there are sex flushes in breast and chest. In both male and female humans, heart rate increases during the excitement phase. Plateau. The excitement phase is followed by the plateau phase. This phase is characterized by a corona and glans penis become enlarged and reddish. Internally, the Cowper's glands, phlegma, a lubricating fluid, and the testes and the scrotum are totally elevated in the human female. The outer vagina swells while the inner vagina expands. It becomes elongated, creating the orgasmic platform or panting orgasm. The orgasm phase is the climax of the sexual response cycle. It is a stage of release wherein the human male achieves ejaculation and the human female is ready to receive the sperm for possible fertilization. In the human male, ejaculation is made possible by the contraction of the vas deferens, seminal vesicles, and the urethra, followed by the contraction of the rectal sphincter. So in the human female, the vagina, uterus, and the anal sphincter also contract. Resolution. In the resolution phase, the male penis returns to its normal unerected phase, whereas the testes and the scrotum descend. So in the human female, the outer and inner reproductive organs also relax. Meron akong video about the 4 phases cycles na i-propose ni na Master and Johnson model.
Now we're going to look at the human sexual response cycle. So this cycle was created by William Masters and Virginia Johnson in 1966, and it basically shows this little paradigm of how the different steps of the human sexual response cycle takes place. So each section is basically showing you what kind of physiological changes that are taking place in the male and female reproductive system. So we'll overlap it a little bit so we have an idea of what to really expect. So first step is the excitement state. Okay, so excitation. So during this phase, you have some kind of stimulus, some kind of visual stimulus, whether it's mechanical, visual, auditory stimulus, what can be even olfactory, so some kind of smell, or even taste that can get you excited erotically. So there is some kind of stimulation, and this causes this first physiological response in the males and females where their erectile tissue becomes engorged with blood. So during excitation, we are in a parasympathetic response. So remember the rest and digest response, where everything becomes hyperdilated in the reproductive system. So in the penis, the shafts of the penis would become engorged with blood, and then in the female vulva, the clitoris, all of these regions would be engorged with blood in order to prepare for intercourse or coitus. So during this phase, excitation, this is all of this pre-reproductive cycle phases, and eventually we lead to the plateau phase. So in the plateau phase, everything is highly engorged. You have all of these different secretions, whether it's from the male reproductive system or the female. So, and then for example, in the female reproductive system, certain kinds of Bartholin glands begin to secrete their lubrications, preparing and again, eventually preparing for an orgasm. So this before this plateau phase is a pre-orgasmic phase. So before the orgasm or any kind of ejaculate or contraction that's going to be taking place. And then finally we have the orgasm. Okay, so orgasm happens both in males and females. In males, it's called ejaculation. Ejaculation is a sympathetic response. This sympathetic response is all generated for the release of semen. So semen is a fluid that contains sperm and other nutrients and other metabolites that allows for the proper form of fertilization. Females also have orgasms, and their orgasm usually is accompanied by certain kinds of uterine and vaginal contractions that are being taken place. It's much easier to have a male orgasm versus a female. Females take much longer to do it because they need much longer stimulation. And what's really important is when we get to the next phase is the resolution phase. So resolution phase is the step after the entire human reproductive cycle, sexual response cycle. After an orgasm, after a man orgasm, he needs to take a break, right? There's an actual time that you need to take a break and have a time to recuperate. So this is referred to as the resolution phase in order to readjust, recalibrate everything. So have semen being reproduced again. But what's unique about this phase is that women do not have this phase. So women do not have this resolution phase of quote unquote need to take a break, because over a long period of time, women can have multiple orgasms back to back to back to back to back, and they can keep doing it, no problem. Men, on the other hand, after every orgasm, need some time to recuperate. So there's an instance where you guys are getting intimate with each other, and the male says, the guy says, I need to take a break, and you're basically peer pressuring him. If you ever let him take like a nap or something, like a 5-10 minute nap to recuperate, then you can go back and enjoy yourselves during this process.
So, Kaplan model, unlike Master and Johnson, Kaplan model sees the sexual response cycle as having relatively independent stages. The three phases of this model include the desire, arousal, and orgasm. In desire, it is the psychological component of the sexual response. It involves sexual thoughts, feelings, which are necessary for a satisfying sexual experience. However, desire does not necessarily translate into an action. Arousal. Arousal space is a space where the excitement and plateau, as defined by the Master and Johnson, take place. It is the psychological component of the sexual response, wherein bodily changes occur as an outcome of sexual stimulation, just like the desire. Arousal may not necessarily translate into the orgasm. Orgasm in Kaplan model is generally similar with the Master and Johnson model, except that this space also includes the resolution space. In Kaplan's model, orgasm is the completion of the sexual response. And that's all for my report. Now I will give the floor to Razel Fernandez to discuss her assigned topic. Thank you.
So good day each and everyone. My name is Razel R. Fernandez, and my topic is all about the sexual response dysfunctions. Sexual dysfunctions are difficulties experienced during any phase of the sexual response cycles, including desire, arousal, orgasm, or pain. These difficulties can affect an individual's ability to experience pleasure or desire, and can be caused by various factors including physical, psychological, and relationship issues. Some people experiences difficulty or problems in some of the sexual phases. So the following are the common sexual response dysfunctions. So number 1 is the sexual desire disorder. When an individual has low levels of desire or has an aversion to sexual activities, sexual arousal disorder when an individual has problems in achieving necessary physiological state for copulation. Example, erectile dysfunctions in males. So problem getting physically aroused enough for sex, like erectile dysfunctions in men. So the next one is orgasmic disorder when an individual has problems in achieving orgasm. Example, premature ejaculation among males, male and female orgasmic disorders, and difficulty having an orgasm, whether it's premature ejaculation in men or other orgasm problems in men or women. So for example, a 32 years old man experiences premature ejaculation. He consistently ejaculates before he or his partner wishes, leading to frustration and dissatisfaction during sexual intercourse. This significantly impacts his confidence and enjoyment of sex. Sexual pain disorders. When there is an experience of pain during the sexual response cycles, example, painful erection or dyspareunia and vaginal spasm or vaginismus, pain during sex, such as painful erection, painful intercourse, or vaginal spasms. So next is the paraphilias. So paraphilias are recurring intense sexual interest or urges involving typical objects, situation, or individuals. While not all paraphilias are disorders. So paraphilic disorders are those that cause distress, impairment in functioning, or harm to others. The focus of paraphilia can vary greatly, encompassing things like inanimate objects, children, non-consenting adults, or acts involving suffering or humiliation. Atypical sexual behaviors are those that are uncommon, potentially harmful, socially unacceptable, or distressing to those involved. So, one type of atypical behavior recognized as a disorder by the APA is paraphilia, where an individual becomes sexually aroused by unusual objects, people, or situations such as inflicting pain or humiliation on non-consenting individuals. A paraphilic disorder occurs when these urges or actions persist for at least 6 months and cause significant distress. So some of the common paraphilic disorders are as follows. So number 1 is the exhibitionism, pleasures from exposing one's genitals to non-consenting people. So, fetishism, arousal from non-living objects, example, shoes, socks, body parts. So, a form of sexual behavior in which gratification is strongly linked to a particular object or activity or a part of body other than the sexual orgasm. So, tourism, touching or rubbing one's body or genitals to non-consenting people, the act of touching or rubbing one's genitals against another non-consenting individual in a sexual manner to attain sexual gratification. So, pedophilia, arousal from children or prepubescent. So, pedophilia is a psychiatric disorder in which an adult or older adolescents experience a primary or exclusively sexual attraction to pubescent children. So, sexual masochism, arousal from actual suffering or humiliation, intentional participation in an activity that involves being humiliated, beaten, bound, or otherwise abused to experience sexual excitement. So, sexual sadism, arousal from actually inflicting pain to others, where individuals derive sexual pleasures from inflicting pain, suffering, or humiliation on others. It's characterized by fantasies or behaviors related to inflicting harm, often accompanied by sexual arousal and orgasm. So, lastly is the transvestic fetishism, for heterosexual males only arousal from wearing clothing by an opposite sex during sexual activities, and who are sexually aroused by the act of cross-dressing and experience significant distress or impairment in socially or occupationally. So here's the last one is the voyeurism, observing other people engage in sexual activities, the act of obtaining sexual gratification from observing others, typically without their knowledge or consent. It involves the pleasure derived from watching others undress, engage in sexual activity, or perform other private acts. So the key element is so that's all in my topic. Thank you.